And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 10 of the Freddy's Ready podcast. I know this setup's a little different. Fuck, my my camera's been giving me some issues lately where you just hear like a background noise that I really didn't want to be heard, and it was kind of really making me upset. So I'm using my laptop. My laptop's still recording. Let's hope it doesn't die because it is at 25%. So we'll go as far as possible, and then if it does cut, we'll just connect it for a little bit and go. But yeah, today we're going to get into some MLB, boxing, and UFC, which is usually the case for now, especially because of the sports not being in season and in progress. But a lot of football's coming back soon, so it should be a really cool thing. Um, but let's just get into it, right? I want to start off with some MLB, most importantly, just simply because that is one of the topics that I do like to cover the most, mostly because of the knowledge that I have in baseball is probably the highest that I have in comparison to the other ones. So let's just get into it. So right away, I want to start off with some predictions, not predictions necessarily, but some analysis of the first half of the season, which is pretty obvious. I mean, you look at teams that have been producing and teams that haven't been producing, especially with expectations that were coming into the year. So obviously, the teams that are performing and teams that aren't performing, teams that are performing are the Dodgers, the Tigers. I thought were going to be really good this year. Houston has been kind of outperforming what they would have originally thought, simply because of all the injuries they're dealing with, as well as lack of superstars that they have. Boston is definitely a team that's underproducing, where I think a lot of people had them in the hunt or had them at first or whatever, even though they have been really hot as of late, but they did kind of have a really tough first half of the season, which they ended off great, but they did have a really tough one as their record doesn't sit too good, as I believe they are 2 games out of first place, which they're 55 and 49, which is not a bad thing. They are in third place, but they are 6 games behind first place. So that's where the constant losing, the constant issues within the organization that was going on in the first half of the season kind of does weigh in. And even though you are having a pretty good year with 55 wins, you are lacking the placement and the seeding that you would want to have. And if you look at it, there is other teams who, well, that AL East is just pretty much stacked when you look at it. Although the only other one I could think of that has a division like that in the AL was part of the AL West. But I mean, other than that, that Blue Jays team looks nasty. The Yankees are in second, and then the NL you have the Dodgers or the Brewers one, where the Brewers are 1 game ahead of the Cubs. They are 61-41. Cubs are 60-42. You have the Dodgers who are 16-43, even though they're 4 for their last 6, and the Brewers are 9 for the last 1. So it just, you get teams that are performing. The Padres are performing, even though they're 4.5 games back. The Giants are performing. So you're getting all these teams are performing, especially the Giants, who had just got the acquisition of Rafael Devers. So you're getting a lot of these teams that are producing more than they would have thought originally, but we have to see how that plays out a little more. But I did want to talk a little bit about Toronto, as they are surging as the number one team in the AL East. And the reason I kind of want to talk about them is because they did make some moves in the offseason with acquiring Anthony Santander, and the pitching's always kind of been there with Kevin Gossman being there, and more. I can't think of the top of my head that closer they have is a pretty good, really good closer. But Alejandro Kirk, they have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Anthony Santander, they got Bo Bichette, they got all these guys who are pretty good, solid ball players. And you just feel like they have they're a young team. You feel like they have a really good chemistry on that side of the ballpark. And opposed to other teams where other teams are just kind of more stacking up. And Toronto did make a big signing of Vladimir Guerrero this year, as well as Anthony Santander. But you look at it, Vladimir Guerrero is only 24, 25 years old, and he's locked up for the next 12 years, if I'm not mistaken. Santander signed, I believe, a 6-year contract. So that team is pretty set for the next couple of years. Um, Now, he signed a 5-year, $92 million contract, so this is a good signing for the Blue Jays. So I'm not surprised that they're number one. I am surprised that they're 60-42, but I wouldn't be surprised that they win that division because of the offensive juggernaut that they can be at any given time, especially with Santander, Vladimir Guerrero, Alejandro Kirk. You get all those guys who are just balling. George Springer's balling, so you get all these guys who are just kind of who produce and give a lot of productivity compared to other players, right? But I mean, the story of the AL has really been the Tigers in Houston. I mean, both these guys are tearing it up. We talked about them last episode. We talked about Houston's obvious two-headed monster in Hunter Brown and Vramber Valdez. Although Hunter Brown has been getting hit up a little bit, and I'm not saying he's getting hit a lot. These stats might be a little inaccurate. I did do them, I want to say, a couple of days ago. So let me just make sure they're not. If they are a little off, pardon me. But you look at it, and the race between the Cy Young was really between Tyler Schoolball, Hunter Brown, and Garrett Crochet. I still think it goes to Tyler Schoolball as of right now, simply because of the longevity, the consistency, the constant winning, the constant performances, the constant high numbers of strikeouts. His team being the number one team in the league, him making high level offenses seem like they're mediocre, especially with he's 10-2, 10-2, or I believe he's a little more than that. I'm sorry, he pitched of the day. Let me just make sure. So Tyler Schoolball is his stats for the year. He's 10-3 with a 2.19 ERA. His WHIP is at 0.815, which is great. His strikeouts are at 164. He's easily going to be over 200 this year, which is whenever you hit that number, you're doing really well. He does lead the league in WAR and ERA as well as WHIP. He leads in walks per nine, strikeouts per walks. So you're getting a constant threat when he's on the mound. You're getting a player who can basically shut down the field, shut down the game of play, and that's what's so beautiful about baseball and so awesome is when you get to the playoffs, you get a lot of people where, oh, we want to see homers, but a lot of times it's whoever's healthiest and whoever's best pitching rotation. If you look at the Washington Nationals, I want to say 2019 when they won it, when yes they had Trey Turner, they had Soto, Rendon who were hot, Zimmerman, they had these guys who had good names and good bats, but no one really picked them to win the World Series. They didn't even win their own division. And you look at it where they knocked out the Dodgers, and they go on, and I can't remember what analyst told me, but I heard him on over the TV, and he goes, "This is when they beat the Dodgers," and he goes, "The one team that nobody wants to face is the Washington Nationals. Why? Because you had a pitching rotation that could compete with anybody, in many people's opinion, was the best in baseball. Where you had Max Scherzer, you had Steven Strasburg, you had Patrick Corbin when Patrick Corbin was actually shutting people down. They had that dominant bullpen. They had guys who could just mix up left and right. Similar to kind of the Dodgers before they got hurt last year, where they did have that pitching rotation. They did have guys, or 2020 when you had Julio Diaz was going back and forth. Really, a lot of guys were kind of interchangeable, right? And it's always a luxury to have as a pitcher, as a ball club, especially got with guys like Nationals. But that's where we're drifting back to the Tigers. Is the Tigers do have a pitching rotation? That's why Tariq Schoolball, in my opinion, is the best pitcher in baseball. The only people I would put him up there with, mind you, but best pitcher in baseball, you can't just go based off of 1 year term, right, or a 1 year stretch. You kind of have to go with a couple years. Obviously, if we go best pitcher in baseball, let's say Paul Skeens goes off for the rest of the year. Is he the best pitcher in baseball? Not really. He had 1 good year. Now, he was lights out last year and he's lights out this year, so he's building himself a case. So the only other person I could put Tyler Schoolball in the conversation with would be a Zach Wheeler or Garrett Crochet maybe. But even Garrett Crochet has been kind of balling up this year. They didn't really have the statistical numbers this last year, but this year he is performing. And let me look up his stats real quick. But you look at Garrett Crochet, and he's also a dominant pitcher right now, who is really helping the Boston Red Sox, right? Who has a 2.19 ERA, which is tied with best in baseball. He has 21. Oh, I'm sorry. So he has 21 games started, which leads the league. He has the most innings pitched, 135.1. He has 165 strikeouts, leads the league in that. And he also leads the league in wins with 11. So he is up there making a case for himself. And although when people come down to the Cy Young Award, I know a lot of times wins gets overlooked now because of the advanced stats, which is ERA, ERA plus. You get the WHIP, you get strikeouts, you get all that. So ultimately, I would give that advantage to Tyler Schoolball still in the Cy Young. I still think he's going to win it because of the performances he's getting, where he's getting 14 strikeouts, 16 strikeouts. He's just dominating, right? And he leads the league in a lot of statistical categories that are more advanced rather than just wins and losses. But Houston has also been dominating because of their depth in the pitching rotation. Although, what's his name? McCumbers? Oh, I can't really figure out his name. McCullers went down. That makes 17 players on their roster on the IL. So it's similar to the Dodgers, and they're still really competing. They're still one of the best teams in baseball. You can make an argument they are the best team in baseball, where I still believe it's the Dodgers, although they have been struggling lately. As of right now, I feel like once it gets to October, Any team in a 7 game series, I feel like most people would pick Dodgers. But you get guys who like Hunter Brown and from Bordeaux who on game one, game two can compete with anybody. Not many ball clubs have two guys of that stature that can go at it with anybody else. Like I mentioned, there's only a few. I would say Detroit's one of them. Dodgers, when healthier, one of them. Glasnow just performed a great game last time. 12 strikeouts and 7 innings pitched, 1 run allowed, 3 hits. And then they also have a Blake Snell. They have a Shohei Ohtani. They have a Clayton Kershaw who's been really pitching like an old Clayton Kershaw, like a vintage Clayton Kershaw. So you get a lot of these ball. You get the Nationals as well with Christopher Sanchez. You got Zach Wheeler who leads that, who's the ace of that ball club. So you have a lot. You have a couple teams who are established starters, but they are all in first place, and they are teams that have been in the top of the game for a while. But that's why I believe the AL has been kind of been taken by storm by the Tigers of Houston. Although Blue Jays are adding themselves in that conversation, I would still favor Tigers and Houston in the playoffs simply because when you look at the Tigers, you are getting experience. They did go last year. They went on a run. So you know this Tigers team's capable of getting hot and going on a run. Where I wouldn't say they're hot right now and they're going on a run. I would rather say they're just being consistently good. They're not on a run where they're just smashing, they're beating, they're on a 10 game win. No. I think Tigers are just better, a good ball club, and they're performing the way they should perform. When you go on a run is when you perform better than you should be, right? For the Dodgers, they're on a very bad stretch with winning or losing 11 out of the last 15 games, which is terrible, right? But Houston is also perform. I believe Houston's on a run. Houston's on a run because Houston's just dominating, right? Especially with so many guys in the IL, you shouldn't be performing this good, but obviously they are. Detroit is just so established where they got guys like Gleyber Torres, Riley Green. They got guys like Javi Baez. All these guys have had experience. Baez is a World Series champion, right? You get guys who Gleyber Torres is a World Series former World Series player. He's been playing in the World Series, playing with the Yankees. He has multiple years of experience, right? You have Tyler Schoolball, who's been dominating last year. Dominated, obviously got lit up. Give a very clutch grand slam from the Guardians, put him on Game 5. But it's gonna happen eventually. You know, as a good pitcher, you're gonna do bombs, right? But that's the point. I do see the Blue Jays kind of being the weaker team out of those three, but I do see the Tigers and Houston kind of leading the charge with Detroit slightly ahead. Um, and then moving on to I want to talk a little bit about just Houston specifically, which Houston has been really blowing a lot of people out of the water. They are a legit contender. They swept the Dodgers in Los Angeles. It proved to them that they could compete with anybody, and I mean they mollywopped us in one of the games. They have a great rotation. They have a great bullpen. Brian Abreu setting up Josh Hader is probably one of the most lethal combinations when especially deep in the game in a close ball game, which most teams can't really compete with, or a lot of teams can't really match. And you look at that, and I would say Houston and their lineup overall is also full of guys with a lot of experience, right? You have Jose Altuve, you have Christian Walker from Arizona last year. So you got a lot of guys who can ball, right? And for example, today's starting lineup for the Astros consists of Taylor Trammell, Jose Altuve, Christian Walker, Cam Smith, John Singleton. So you get Mauricio Dubon. So you get guys who are doing their job. And then just that pitching rotation, give them a lead, and that pitching's gonna shut you down, right? Especially if you go into the seventh, eighth, ninth, and they have a lead. It's really hard to come back against those guys. And with their just veteran experience, they're really good at just doing what they know what they have to do, and they don't really try to do anything else. But moving on a little bit past that, I kind of want to go into the National League, and a team that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough is the Cubs. And although I know the Cubs are a game behind first place and have, I believe, the second best um, record in the NL, this team kind of gets overlooked simply because I want to say the pitching rotation isn't really as dominant as other pitching rotations. But you look at that offense with Kyle Tucker and Pete Crow Armstrong, who that team as a ball club, they're fifth in the league in batting average, second in the league in the runs, and third in the league in slugging. So they're an offensive juggernaut. They're one of their top five offense in baseball, in my opinion. You can't really put anybody else with them. I would say them, Brewers, Dodgers, Phillies, and maybe um, mm, Detroit. maybe because Detroit does put a lot of runs, but even then, the Cubs gotta go a lot over those teams. And although the Phillies control their division, the Mets are also catching up to them. So the Cubs are really a team who are battling it with the Milwaukee Brewers. I do believe the Cubs are going to end up being on top. I do. I think they'll surpass the Brewers. The Brewers just gotten a run. They're 9-1 of the last 10 games. I don't expect them to perform that the rest of the year. And I do expect the Cubs to kind of consistently be good, which I expect them in the ratio of the last 10 games. I expect them to keep a 7-3 ratio where they're winning 7-3 out of every 10 games. Every 10 games in Milwaukee, I see them 6-4, 5-5. So I do see Milwaukee kind of slowing down a little bit, and later on, and where I see Chicago keeping it up the whole time. And the Mets do also have their sight on first place in the Phillies division, which is the NL East. And I still think the Phillies are going to be the better team. Phillies, for the longest, I want to say, are going to run that division. They have Trey Turner, who's balling. They have Bryce Harper. They got Kyle Schwarber. Their pitching rotation is ridiculous. They're just a team that's been there for a while now. They've been there for a couple of years. They've been to the World Series 3 years ago. So that team's going to be dominant. The Mets, I still see them kind of figuring it out this year, especially with the loss of pitching that they had this year. But I do see the Mets getting back in there next year, really establishing themselves as the top team in the National League. But this year, I do see them kind of falling out of first place, and the Phillies running the rest of that division. So the National League is going to be a fireworks for the rest of the year. There's going to be a lot of lead changes. I do see the Mets passing the Phillies, but then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, I see the Phillies going ahead. But the Dodgers, I want to talk about the Dodgers' recent struggle, and the main question is what's going wrong. So there's no surprise and it's no shocker that the Dodgers have been battling injuries all year. The Dodgers have been really down a lot. I mean, you look at it, they're down Phillips for the rest of the year. Kopech is on the 60-day AL. Scott just got put on the 15-day AL. Trina's is aiming for a return. Bruce Largadoral's out. Roki Sasaki's making a return in August, according to Dave Roberts. You're getting Blake Snell, who's hopefully making a return soon, who's pitched a couple games in the minor league system. So you get guys who are on the verge of coming back, and this is the reinforcement the Dodgers really need because of the lack of offensive productivity they've been getting from their team. Where Muncy went down, and I know this might sound crazy, but my dad always told me this, and this is kind of funny. But he tells me, he goes, man, without Muncy, that team just goes down. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, trust me. And I'm seeing it. The Dodgers' defense isn't the same. I just don't see anybody replacing Muncy at third base. Rojas is a great defensive player, but I see Rojas more at shortstop, second base. Third base, Muncy to me is the best third baseman for the Dodgers as of right now. And his bat was getting hotter and hotter and hotter. He is a guy who works counts, really drags pitchers into deep waters. So he is a guy who benefits the team. Whether or not he gets a hit every day, he does drag the lineup and really makes the pitcher work. So he's a nightmare for a pitcher in terms of pitch count. And there's another one. There's the one guy that I really wanted to talk about, and I'm not here to bash him or anything like that. I just really think his lack of productivity is really hurting the Dodgers, and that's Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts is probably having his worst year hitting-wise in a long, long time. We haven't seen him struggle like this before. They put him in the leadoff position and let Shohei Ohtani bat second, with Shohei Ohtani is probably the most unselfish player of all baseball, knowing that he's been tearing it up at the leadoff slot. But he did say, he acknowledged it, said, you know what, Mookie Betts, make it feel a little better. I'll bat in the second spot, which Ohtani's good at anywhere, right? I do see Ohtani going back to the leadoff spot later in the year and entering the playoffs. I don't think Mookie Betts will be there, especially if he continues to have a 240 buck average heading into the playoffs. But if he picks it up, this team's gonna get crazy scary. Which Mookie Betts is Mookie Betts. He's an all-time great player, all-time great player of this generation with 3 rings. So I see Mookie Betts picking it up, hopefully ending the year around with 270, 260, and then the top playoffs, right? But they have been losing a lot of games. They have been losing too many games. They can't hold a lead. They can't score a lot of runs. They're just a team who's been really banged up, where last year you had Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teoscar. Those were really intertwined. It weren't really – nobody else would get into that spot. Obviously now Will Smith having one of the best years in baseball, one of the best seasons as a catcher, hitting 320, bombs, great defensive glove as well. But he does get a lot of rest because of Dalton rushing being there. So I want to see what's the lineup heading into October. Heading into September, I'm sorry. If we're going into September, we're going to see a really good stable lineup from the Dodgers. Do I see it going back to last year? I don't know yet. Oscar hasn't really been performing the same way as well as Mookie Betts. So we'll see how that changes, especially with the addition to Muncy, and then we'll see what happens at the trade deadline. So I did want to talk a little bit about also the MVP race in baseball, and this one's pretty interesting because in the National League you have Pete Crow Armstrong and Shohei Ohtani. Do I think it's close? A little bit. I don't see it being too close. I do think that the gap is growing larger and larger with Ohtani getting more and more dominant on the mound as well as hitting homers and leading the NL in homers. And it's just to me doesn't make sense. Like I don't know how you could pick anybody over Ohtani in the MVP race, and I'm not saying that because he's a Dodger. I just mean you look at it, he's pitching, he's dominant, and then he's hitting 38 bombs in a year. He's probably gonna hit 50 bombs this year. So you get to that point where you're saying, okay, he hits 50 bombs, probably gonna bring in a buck something RBIs, and he's gonna win a couple games, and his ERA is at like a 1 or a 2, right, or a 3 if anything. But even at 3 ERA, I mean, nobody else is doing that, right? So that's why I think Otani's running away with it in my opinion. And the American League, Judge is also running away with that. Kyle Riley has been struggling ever since the end of the All-Star break, as well as a little bit before the All-Star break, with his average dropping to 355. Does lead the league in homers in 80 and 38, as well as 83 RBIs, but his OPS has dropped to 983, or it was 985 or 955, one of the two. And you look at Judge, who's 352 average, 335 bombs, 85 runs, 125 hits, 465 on base percentage, 725 slugging, an OPS of 1.184. It might be a little different. I did those stats a couple days, like 2 days ago, I want to say. So it might be a little different, might be a little higher, might be a little lower in terms of the average, but everything else should be higher, or I'll be the on base percentage slugging. But he's kind of running away with it. No one's really within the realm. I would say Kyle Riley was in there. If Kyle Riley can go on a run and really bring up that average a little bit, bring up that OPS, it's worth having a conversation with taking into consideration the defensive, capabilities both these guys have. Kyle Riley cows the game all day. He's a catcher, and then Aaron Judge plays right field. So we do know where the value sits there, right? But yeah, I do see my MVPs at the end of the year being Ohtani and Aaron Judge, which back to back for both guys, right? But that concludes the whole baseball portion of the podcast. I think we've kind of covered many of the things of the topics that I wanted to cover in baseball. We're just kind of giving a review, and maybe next episode we'll go into a little more detail about specific teams, breaking down their actual success and the reasons for success, right? But now I want to get into boxing. And boxing I had a terrible weekend this year in boxing. I mean, my predictions were brutal. I had the wall by knockout. I had Barrios winning a unanimous decision decisively. I had Tim Tszyu winning, and all of them got beat up. It was bad. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Pacquiao and Barrios card, it was unbelievable. I mean, Pacquiao at his age, to put up a fight against him, it's one of the greatest of all time. Well, he's my greatest of all time. I think he's the greatest boxer of all time. And I know there's this idea of, he was on steroids, but as a fan, I can't be like, he was on steroids if he wasn't on steroids. If he was never been caught. You can't judge somebody based on something they haven't been caught for, right? So I would say Pacquiao to me is the greatest of all time. 8-division world champion, beat likes of Barrera, Morales, Marquez beat him a lot. He beat Keith Thurman, who was, when he was already 40 something. Keith Thurman was already probably honestly a little out of his prime, but still entering his prime. He knocked out, or he beat the brakes off of Margarito. He beat Miguel Cotto. He beat all these guys who were Sugar Shane Mosey, whooped them. He beat a lot of these guys who are Hall of Famers as well as established champions, and he just made them look like they were nothing. I want to say Marquez did give him a good run for his money, as well as Eric Morales, but yeah, other than that, he was just whooping guys left and right, and he was just tearing through those divisions. Like, he was beating the best of the best. So to me, Pacquiao's the greatest, but for him to still put up a fight like that against Barrios, either you get one of two things: Pacquiao still has it a little bit, or Barrios is just not a good champion. And I believe it's the second one. I don't think Barrios is a good champion. I think if you put Barrios against Norman at 147, Norman probably stops him early, or not early, but stops him in the fight. As well as you put him against any 147 guy. You put him against Haney outboxes him. You put him up against at 147. Who else do they got at 147? I believe probably even Ryan Garcia beats him. Rolly I think would be a good match. Both Bada doesn't really pack the punch, and Rolly does really pack the punch. So that would actually be an interesting fight, to be honest. But yeah, and then getting into the co-main event, which is Fundura and Tim Tszyu 2. So I had this fight going with Tim Tszyu making it a dog fight and staying in the pocket the whole time. I had Tim Tszyu actually winning. I thought he was going to get in there, really rough him up, leave Fundura in a place of discomfort. But Fundura just seemed to improve greatly since the last fight. His ability to really fight from range and not allow Tim Tszyu to get close to him was beautiful. I mean, you look at it, and Tszyu couldn't come close to him. He could not come close to him at all for the beginning portion of the fight. He started to land big overhands later in the rounds, but Fundura was just dominating. I mean, Fundura literally did not let him get close. He stuck him. Those hooks were disgusting. I mean, Fundura's hooks were disgusting, and Tszyu just couldn't come close. And Tszyu ultimately had a good round at the end of the rounds, getting better rounds, but he stayed on the stool. Can't really blame him. I mean, he was taking a lot of punishment, although he was starting to dish it out a little better. It was one of those where he even said in the post-fight press conference that I felt like I was shadow boxing in there, right? So ultimately it gets to a point where I guess the frustration does kind of overweigh. I've never been in the ring, so I can't really put him down for that. But I would assume the frustration just took over and he was just overwhelmed and couldn't continue the fight. But this is the one that pissed me off the most was Usyk and Dubois. I'm a big fan of Usyk, but I also thought Dubois was going to win because of Dubois' power punching, as well as his youth and experience that he was gaining, knocking these guys out. I was like, you know what, this guy's going to come in there, dashing, he's going to cut him off. But hell no. Usyk dominated him in every aspect of boxing. I mean, you look at it, Usyk looked better than ever, completely dismantling the big British boxer, right? He delivered the nasty knockout, but Dubois was fighting as if Usyk doesn't have great footwork. Dubois was very, very stationary, would not cut the ring off. Whenever Usyk would exchange, Usyk would turn him towards Dubois' left side. So, as a boxer, no, I'm not a boxer, but looking at it from a fan base, from a fan perspective, I've seen Canelo is one of the best examples of a guy who really does a good job of avoiding being turned. That left hook is the key to not having them turn, right? It was, I believe, one time where I saw Dubois really throw a left hook right as Usyk was going to turn. Obviously, Usyk blocked it, but it stays in their conscious where, okay, I can't turn without at least thinking twice about it. And that's all you need as a power puncher is somebody to think twice so you can go out and get him, right? And that's what I noticed is Dubois was just not doing anything to stop him. Usyk would hit him and roll right under, turn around, and boom, pepper him with a jab. So it was just the point where you would see Dubois getting hit, and he would land vicious combinations on him. I mean, Usyk just kept sticking, turning him, eventually dropping him in, I believe, the fifth round. As soon as he got up, literally lands an overhand left hook, which I believe he calls the Ian or the Ivan hook. Literally, like, had Dubois seeing stars. And he's a nightmare for anybody. I mean, honestly, you have to put him in the conversation for the greatest of all time. Conquered two divisions, 3-time undisputed champion. He has beaten the likes of Anthony Joshua twice, Tyson Fury twice, Dubois twice, Derek Chisora and Tony DeBellew, right? So those are fighters who are top level fighters, and he's beating all these guys like nothing ever happened. Like these fights weren't even that close. I would say the Fury, the first one was kind of close, but even then it wasn't even that like. Joshua, he worked him. Fury in the second fight worked him. Dubois, absolutely, it was a massacre, right? And then that's why I'm just like, you have to put this guy in a pound for pound. I mean, the guy here reminds me of, and I'm not gonna say they have the same styles because I don't think they do. I think his style is really the only comparison you could have is Lomachenko, but it has heavyweight. He reminds me of more of an Evander Holyfield. The reason why is because Evander Holyfield was a guy who came down from cruiserweight and went up and really dominated with his fast combinations and counterpunching. Holyfield was really good at being light on his feet, moving back and forth, throwing nasty combinations, as well as he was a really big guy. And you look at it, Holyfield compared to all these other big heavyweights was a little smaller, but his movement and his speed was off the charts. And that's what Usyk kind of reminds me of. Although Usyk is more finesse and more activity and volume, where Holyfield was okay, I'm gonna bounce, but I'm gonna sit down on my combinations and then I'm gonna roll, right? And then Usyk is more I'm gonna pepper you until you get frustrated. That's what I'm gonna start doing my work and let the overhand. But that is the conversation. But I also do say Usyk has to be in the conversation. I'm not saying he has to be the GOAT, but he is in the conversation. He has to be in the conversation. You have to, whenever you talk about GOATs in boxing, Usyk's name has to come up. Another fight that happened the week before was the Edgar Berlanga and Shiraz fight. So this fight was interesting. I thought it was gonna be closer. I did see Shiraz beating him. I thought Shiraz was gonna beat him later in the rounds, but Shiraz just worked them. I mean, when they got in there, mind you, Berlanga's a huge boxer. When he was in there against Canelo, obviously Canelo's a lot smaller, but when he was in there with Canelo, he looked like a linebacker and Canelo was a running back. And you look at him and Shiraz like he was a center, and Berlanga was a shooting guard, small forward. And Shiraz, obviously being nicknamed the Giraffe, just put a whooping on him. He dropped him twice in the fourth round, once in the fifth, which ultimately led to the knockout. Berlanga was like clearly not his level. Shiraz kept him on the outside and stung him with straight punches for the first 3 rounds. When Berlanga would close the distance, he wouldn't work on the inside at all. He would let Shiraz get off on the inside, really land those short hooks, which is the one that actually ended up dropping him and hurting him the most, was that inside hook where Shiraz and Berlanga both initiated a clinch, or they both came forehead to forehead, and it seemed Shiraz took that step back and noticed that Berlanga wasn't throwing. And that's when Berlanga tended to lean forward a little more, and Shiraz threw that big left hook, hurt him, and then threw 3 more hooks after that really put him down. And Berlanga just doesn't have, I believe, the skill. It was just one of those things where right off the bat, I noticed that Shiraz, every time he would throw, Berlanga would react the same way, which is pick that left shoulder up in a Philly shell style and try to turn. When it was like, bro, you're 6 feet away, you you can't, like, you're getting whooped. You can't just be that hesitant and that fearful of what's coming towards you. And Shiraz made it known right away that he was just gonna dominate. So Shiraz, obviously, he's a mandatory for Canelo's belt next. I would like to see him versus Pacheco or Mbili. That would be my fight right there. Mbili is a guy who doesn't really have the recognition that many other boxers do because of the lack of resume that he possesses. But a Shiraz and a fight with him would be great for boxing. And I do really think Turkey is going to do that job, which is give the fights they want to see. And Mbili also deserves a title shot. He's being ranked number 1 in many of the respective bodies. So, I mean, I like Shiraz and Pacheco, or Shiraz and Mbili. That's my guy. That's the next fight for me. And the winner of those guys get Canelo, right? And the co-main event of that card was the Shakur and Cepeda fight. And I love this fight for both fighters. Shakur showcased his brilliance within the sport of boxing and his capabilities in the ring. Shakur really stood in the pocket and didn't get tagged often. This is a Shakur that we want, right? We want the Shakur where he stays in the pocket, avoids getting hit with big shots, and makes you pay. That jab to the body is money. His ability to see punches coming and counter is off the charts. He's probably the best counter puncher in boxing. And the reason I would say that is it's hard to do that, especially with a guy like Cepeda who's just throwing a lot, where it kind of overwhelms you a little more. Where you're like, all right, you know what, like I can't really have to put more punches. But many times you would see Shakur understand the range well, understand the distance between him and Cepeda, where Cepeda would throw and Shakur wouldn't even move and the punch wouldn't hit him. And that's when he would counter. And Shakur, I mean, his eyes are off the charts. You look at it, and there was times in the fight where Cepeda would throw punches and Shakur would literally look at the punch and then look at Cepeda and then boom, counter. That's Mayweather effect right there. That's the guy who resembles Mayweather, right? And Cepeda was a game opponent for a guy like Shakur Stevenson, and he earned a lot of fans tonight, or a lot of fans that day, right? His relentlessness and offensive output led to many believe that he would give Shakur a good fight, and that's what did happen. But ultimately, Shakur is that good, and Shakur is a lot bigger than these guys. Where Shakur is just gonna out strengthen these guys and bully these guys, right? And that's exactly what happened. And then you look at the fight before that one, and there was a bunch of fights everywhere, right? You had the Albert Puello fight versus Matias, who, in my opinion, was a very high level fight. You watched the entire fight, and obviously, I was kind of surprised by the decision. I thought Puello won the fight with his counterpunching and slickness on defense. Matias did push the pace the entire fight, which I do believe won him the fight, but I don't think it was enough to win the fight, to be honest. I think that was what the judges saw, where, okay, the constant pressure, the constant body work, we'll give it to him, but Puello did land more decisive punches and more better and more clear counter punching, right? And the Matias will fight Dalton Smith in November, which is the fight that was announced to be the winner, whatever. So then before that fight, we had David Morrell, where we have David Morrell with Iman Katayev, right? A banger, which is a banger. I mean, this was my favorite fight leading up to the actual event. I initially thought Morrell was going to win this fight convincingly, but Morrell during the fight seemed to be letting off the gas pedal frequently, getting caught by some of these punches, not countering effectively, and lack of focus. Him getting caught by an overhand right from a mile away woke him up for sure, but took too long for the body works and the setup traps of Katayev. So there were instances where I thought Morrell should have really let his hands go and thrown more body shots and really countered. There was many times Katayev really found love with that left hook, and I would have liked Morrell with his slickness and his actual boxing ability to slip under that and counter with a straight left. And it was there most of the fight. And he did it, I believe, once, and Katayev really slowed him down a little bit, but Katayev was just continuing to throw those looping left hooks, and Morrell didn't really do anything enough. They did give the fight to Morrell, which I could see as a shocker. I didn't have him winning, especially being dropped, but Morrell is very, very young and inexperienced, and this experience, along with the Benavidez fight, is going to help him improve drastically. So I do see Morrell coming back better, bigger, and better, as well as dominating that heavyweight division. Light heavyweight division. I would like to see him fight like Callum Smith or any of these fights, right? So that's the conclusion. Oh, and also the Bam fight, Bam versus Kafu. I mean, Bam is, for those that don't think Bam is top 5 pound for pound, you just don't know boxing. Bam is top 5 pound for pound. If they were all the same size, I would pick Bam over anybody. If they were all the same size, Bam is not only beating these guys with skill, but he's knocking these guys out. So at that lower weight class, you don't really see guys knocking people out like that left and right with showcase as well as showcasing great boxing skills and capabilities. But Bam's doing that, and Bam to me is top 5 pound for pound fighter in the world, to be honest. And that leads me to go into the UFC, which I kind of want to go over briefly because there was some fight announcements as well as some recap that I want to go over real quick. But there was news that John Jones was entering the testing pool. So what does this mean? That means he is rumored to get a title shot at the White House, which Dana White shut down immediately, saying that he is a liability, that he doesn't want a fighter to jeopardize the entirety of the event because of their past and their the word would be their reputation, I would say. So there's a big thing. So what does this mean for Tom Aspinall? So Tom Aspinall is booked to fight Cyril Gane, which I believe he's going to run through Cyril Gane, probably submits him or just stops him with ground and pound, because I believe the ground game is going to be too much for Cyril Gane, as well as the speed that Tom Aspinall possesses. So if I'm Tom Aspinall, I'm happy for a couple things. I'm going to get a lot of money. I mean, a lot of money. If I were Tom Aspinall, and let's say I beat Cyril Gane, and they come up to me and they say, "Hey, you know what? We're gonna main event you," and this might be the Dana White biting his tongue a little bit, but if they come up to me, and let's say I'm Tom Aspinall, obviously, right? And they come up to me and they go, "Hey, how would you like to fight John Jones at the White House?" I would say no. I would refuse to fight him. I would say I was on the shelf for a whole year because you guys promised me this fight and you guys told me he was going to fight. If you want me to fight at that White House, I would fight John Jones if you pay me for that whole year off. I want 2 fights worth of salary for this fight. So if I'm making $5 million, I want $10 million a fight. This one right here, $20 million, whatever he's getting, I want double the money. That's the only way I would see it, because the UFC, everybody knows that White House, the biggest card they could put is a Conor and John Jones on the same card, right? And they're heavyweights. So, and that's probably the biggest fight you can make right now is a John Jones versus Tom Aspinall. So what would I do? I would say, you know what? If I'm Tom Aspinall, okay, I know that this is the fight they want. I know for a fact this is the fight they want. So, and they're probably going to be willing to give a lot up for it. Especially, Donald and freaking Dana White are buddies. So Donald's going to be like, hey, break up John Jones. Guess what? Guess who's just landing a little bit of money? Donald, right? Donald and Turkey probably or whatever. So Donald's going to, hey, Dana, give him the money. And that's Tom Aspinall was like, give me the money. I'm going to go whoop his ass. And I'm going to get paid twice as much. So that's why if I'm Tom Aspinall, I'm refusing. I mean, when have you heard of a champion who wasn't hurt have the same amount of title defenses as the interim champion of that division, right? I mean, it's just a mockery of the sport, a mockery of of what a lot of people liked in the UFC, which was best fight the best, and they didn't get that because of them wanting John Jones and this. So if whatever, that's it for John Jones. I don't want to get heated right now, but Dustin Poirier versus Max Holloway, nearly cried, man. So it was an emotional roller coaster because both of these fighters touching the octagon in the second round, man. Both those guys got dropped, and I was just like, damn. Holloway's a bad man, though. I mean, I told everybody Holloway at lightweight is a lot better than people think. This guy can hit, man. This guy's not drained. As well as I didn't like when fighters go up and they go back down. A lot of times they don't have success. The only guy who I've seen have a lot of success was Daniel Cormier. But a lot of these fighters go down and they get chinned because the weight cut drains their body and drains their chin. So you look at Holloway, and I would say from a matchmaker's perspective, he's one fight away from a guaranteed title fight. And he definitely did enough for a title fight, but Armand still deserves a shot. And especially because Armand is ranked number one, you have to give it to him. I don't care that he pulled out with a back injury. You give Armand to Poirier. It's the best versus the best. Armand is the best. If Conor McGregor pulled out, guess who's going to be McGregor going again? That's the way it works, right? And you look at Paulo Costa versus Kopilov, and it was a great performance. I mean, his body kicks and counter accuracy was fun to watch. Costa undoubtedly looked like the old Costa. I see him picking up a fight with a top five opponent soon. So we do have that RDR versus Robert Whitaker fight that's this weekend, which is going to be very interesting and is going to dictate a lot of the rankings and a lot of the fights that are coming up. So we know Hamza and DDP. So there are, I want to say, two clear contenders for that card. You're going to have Imavov, who's on the shelf, who just came off knocking off Israel Adesanya, who's a clear cut number one contender. Well, that's a guy you want to have, right? I would match him up with the winner of RDR and Robert Whitaker or Paulo Costa. You match those guys up, that's a banger fight right there. Imavov versus Paulo Costa for a title shot, number one contendership, automatic money maker right there. Because if we do look at the rankings and we really analyze it, this is the way it goes. So Drake is the champion. Hamzat and him are fighting. Imavov is the number one, is the number two in the UFC, or number three. You have Israel Adesanya, we have Whitaker, we have RDR, and then we have Paulo Costa, who also is up there. So I would say you give Paulo Costa to RDR, winner of RDR, and Whitaker, or you give him Imavov. And Imavov, I can knock any of these guys out either way. But I just want to see that fight. I want to see those two big middleweights go at it, which is Paulo Costa, Imavov, two styles who both snipers, but I mean Paulo Costa can knock anybody out, you know. But we do have new fight announcements from the UFC, which is UFC 320, which the following fights have been announced for October 4th, 2025, in the T-Mobile Arena in the state of Las Vegas, Nevada. Right? So we have Ankalaev versus Pereira 2, which is going to be an interesting fight. Can Pereira avenge his loss, or will Ankalaev continue to reign his light heavyweight division? There was also announced Corey Sandhagen versus Merab Dvalishvili, which is an interesting matchup, more than people think. Merab has been on a dominant run, tearing through the entire bantamweight division. But I do believe the best test for him currently is Corey Sandhagen, a guy who can strike with the best of them and can also grapple good enough to not be held down in the entirety of a fight. That's the most skillful match on this card, because after that you have a fight that is filled with pure violence in Yuri Prohashka versus Khalil Roundtree. We all know this fight's going to be fireworks. Both fighters with crazy volume and power. Yuri and Khalil are both great strikers, but they do have differences in style. This is going to be a clash of two exciting styles. And this is going to be very interesting matchup because Yuri is unorthodox with his movements, and Khalil is a lot more Muay Thai based. So it's going to be a really good fight. I mean, I don't know who to lean forward to yet. I want to wait a little more to the. I want to let the matchup marinate a little bit, see break some fights down. But I mean, Khalil looked great against Jamal Basoda, Yuri Prohashka, right? So these are the fights that are being announced soon, as well as Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gahn. I want to say it's in late October. It is going to be 321, which is on October. Oh, it's in Abu Dhabi. It's in October. Which is it? October 21st. October 25th in Abu Dhabi. So I mean, that bangers in October, right? October's gonna have banger cards. So that's it. I mean, I'll break these fights down a little later into another podcast as well as the fights get a little closer. We do have some fights coming up. We do have the RDR and Barbara Whitaker fight coming up. Let's see what cards after that. So we have Robert Whitaker. Then we have in August, not really any pay per views. Oh no, we have August 16th, Dricus du Plessis versus Hamza Chimaev. We have the Contender Series. We have September 13th, which is Diego Lopez versus Silva in Mexico City. No, in San Antonio, Texas, I'm sorry. And we have Ankalaev versus Pereira October 4th. And then October 25th, we have Aspinall gone too. So we have an exciting schedule coming up for the UFC, which is always going to be a great. So I mean, we're excited. We're excited as fans. We're excited to see this. So I expect a great couple months of UFC, great end of the year, which I do believe they'll stack up a card later in the year. So yeah, but I mean that consists of this podcast, guys. I really hope you guys really liked it. This is episode 10. I I apologize for the quality. I apologize for the camera angle. But I'm gonna edit it, and if it looks pretty good, I might just keep it because it was a lot easier to set up and it was a lot easier to control and to really edit. So we'll see how it goes from there. But once again, thank you guys. God bless you guys. I'm gonna try and make some merch. I'm not even gonna cabbage you guys. I'm gonna try and make some merch. I have this thing right here, but I did change the logo of our actual podcast logo, which is a picture of me in AI Dodger hat, But I am gonna make some merch. So if you guys do like it, whoever watches this full episode, I'm gonna get you free merch. If I'm not gonna put it on anything, but if you watch the entire episode, if you get to this, I want you to text me 2:46 p.m. Thursday, July 24th. If you text me that, I'm gonna get you some free merch. Guarantee it. All right. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode 10 of the Freddy's Ready podcast. I will see you guys on the next one. God bless. See you guys at the top.